Hey everybody, welcome to the channel. We're glad you're here. So today we've got a review of the Titanium Plasma 65 from Harbor Freight. Let's get into it. All right, so let's go through what comes in the box on the Titanium Plasma 65. Here's the 220 plug for it. And then for 110, you simply plug this adapter in. And it's set up for, this is a 20 amp, 110 volt plug. Okay, so here's the ground clamp on this, and it is number 7 wire gauge, and it's got this DINS connector that plugs right into the front of this. So it just goes in with a twist lock, and we've got a 10-foot ground clamp. Okay, and the power cord is 12 wire gauge. Of course, there's 3 wires in that, and it's a 10-foot cord as well. All right, so here is our 65 amp plasma torch, and it's a 14-foot long cord on it, and it just unscrews the protective cap, and it plugs in right here. And tightens down. Okay, so this torch is a standoff style torch. So in other words, you have to have 1/16 of an inch from the contact tip to the workpiece. And then it has this guide that will do that standoff for you. And the thing that's nice about that is you can adjust this to whatever portion, whichever direction you want, to be able to slide along a guide to do your cut. You just have to measure from the center of the tip to the edge of that guide. Okay, and this Titanium Plasma 65 also comes with some consumables. So we've got 3 of the electrodes and 3 of the little contact tips. And we've got a wrench to be able to change them. So here's something on the 110 adapter for this plasma cutter. It says it'll run on 110, and it will. This is a 20 amp, 110 volt plug. And I don't know about you, but I don't have any. Most of mine are 15 amp outlets that don't have the side slot. And you can get an adapter for that, but one doesn't come with it. So if you're going to take this someplace and think you're going to run it in somebody's garage, you may or may not be able to without an adapter like this, because this is a 20 amp plug. So you can get an adapter to plug into that outlet. But if that outlet's not 20 amp, say it's only 15, you may blow the breakers more. Okay, so on the back of the unit is what looks like a transformer breaker or a disconnect, but that's the on-off switch. So if you can see that, there are actually 2 switches in there tied together with a bar, kind of like a 220 breaker, but that's the on-off switch. Okay, and the air inlet on this 65 amp plasma cutter has a little filter back here, and looks like it would probably collect any oil or water that might be in your compressor. So it does say it uses 80 psi minimum up to 120 psi. So we'll go ahead and, I've got my air compressor set on 80. We'll go ahead and plug that in. Okay, and we're plugged in. We've got 80 psi going in, and I don't hear any leaks, so we should be good. All right, so I think we've got everything hooked up and we're ready to do some test cuts. One of the things that I was kind of thinking it might have, because all of the MIG welders that I've gotten from Harbor Freight have a really nice chart of if it's this thick, use this many amps and stuff like that. I thought maybe this would have, like if you're cutting 1/4 inch, put this many, put this much air pressure to it and put it on however many amps, but there's nothing like that. There's a little chart here, but I don't see any usable information for me on that. So I guess it's trial and error. Okay, so let's turn it on and see what the front looks like. Okay, so we've got a power indicator light. This light is a little red light that comes on when you're cutting, apparently. That can be useful. And this is an overheat light if you're cutting above the capacities, I guess. So here we've got a selector switch for, this is the setting for plate. And then if you're cutting, which I've got to do this, any kind of mesh material, you can put it on that. And what that does is it keeps the pilot arc lit in between those as you're going for, this cuts anything it conducts electricity to, and this gives you a little bit longer time to get the next piece of steel. So we're going to try it out on plate, and then we've got our selector switch for however many amps we want to run, and the lowest setting is 20 and the highest is 65. And again, we're running this on 220 volts. Okay, so for our first cut, I've just got some of the 1/4-inch metal that I was practice welding on. And since there's no guidelines or whatever, I'm just going to start at 35. And what I do like is the digital readout. Because if I cut this at, say, 35 and it just blows through it, then I know I can cut it down to maybe 30 or something. And once I find what cuts it good on 1/4 inch, since that's a common size I'm going to be cutting, right, I'll probably just put a little post-it note or something, little label here on the machine itself. When we're cutting, it recommends obviously some heavy gloves, so I'm just going to use my welding gloves. My long sleeve shirt I've got is 100% cotton, so it won't melt. I've got a respirator that I wear when I weld, and I'm going to go ahead and use that. And then finally, I've got my Miller Elite welding helmet that has all the modes for cutting also. So I'm going to go ahead and start at 10, and then I will just turn it down if I need to, or obviously turn it up if that's the case. So let's get to cutting. The other thing is I've got plenty of fire extinguishers. There's one there. And the other thing, I've moved this cutting table out into the middle of the garage, so I don't really have any flammable things. I've got at least 10 foot around anything that's flammable. So we'll watch real good, but I really probably, if I'm going to do a lot of cutting, I'll probably move this outside. Okay, let's see about cutting. I'm just going to cut a line across right there. So it's got a double acting switch. Just need to move this out of the way so you can hit it. All right, eyeballs. Okay, I know my welding helmet was too dark. Well, if you look at this, it cut most of the way through it, and I think some of it kind of glued itself back together. So let's turn the amperage up a little bit and try again. Okay, so I'm going to go to 40. Now let's go to 45. I like 45. I'm going to turn my welding helmet from 10. I'm going to go down to 9. I've heard you don't want to ever use less than 8, so sounds good to me. All right, you ready? Eyeball. Okay, I can see better that time. But it still didn't quite cut it all the way in two. But it looks like it's close. So let's check out this cut. I probably just didn't go, I'm going to say I probably went maybe too fast. The other thing is it went through those welds on the bottom. So this looks like a real clean cut. That's not that clean. But I was able to keep a pretty straight line. So I'm pretty happy with it. Make sure you wear your gloves. That thing is smoking hot. Okay, I went ahead and turned it up to 50, and we'll just see what that looks like. So here's 1/4 inch at 50 on 220 volts. Okay, so here is that cut, and that was at 50 on 220 volts. This cut here was the 45 setting. So I think 50 is pretty good. I still got some of that dross on the bottom of that, but I believe that is because I was probably not moving fast enough. It pretty much went through it like butter. And there is that large weld that didn't have a lot of penetration. You know, we could do a nice probably dye test on that, acid etch, and see how much penetration we had on that weld. But anyway, like I said, it's pretty good cut. So I think when I cut 1/4 inch, I'll probably be on 50. Okay, and part of what I wanted to do, this is a cutting edge off a bulldozer, and I kind of want to do some metal art also. And so I'm going to try to cut out this arrow shape using straight edges, and we'll see how that does. This is thicker than 1/4, it's about 5/16 thick, and it's also hardened. So we're going to turn it up. I'm just going to turn it all the way up to 65 and see how it does. Okay, and so from the center of this guard to the center of the torch, it's about 3/8. But what I did was I just clamped that down and looked at it to make sure that was going to be where I want that cut. So I'm going to use a guide as a straight edge to cut this out. And what I'll do is I'll start in the center and then just work it all the way out, and we'll see how that goes. Okay, and this cutting edge is hardened, so that's another reason to turn it all the way up. So let's try it out. So that cut pretty good, but because I plunge cutted it, it blew some of the stuff back out. And they said that's one of the things that can make your consumables wear out quicker. So let's move our edge and do another cut.
You're calling that a cutting edge. What was it, a cutting edge?
Oh, yeah, the dirt. This goes bolts on the bottom of a bulldozer blade.
Oh, okay. Yep, I see what it is now.
Very nifty. You have to do some cleanup probably on it. That's not quite as clean, but I jerked it, you know, instead of moving smoothly. So this one comes out. So that's what we're fighting. Looks like there's some that's not didn't get cut. All this slag basically, or they call it dross for plasma cutting, but anyway, it chips off with a chipping hammer pretty easily. Make sure you wear eye protection. Okay, so there's that cutout piece, and you can see how thick that is. It's probably at least 5/16, and then it was a worn cutting edge, which is why we replaced it. But at the smallest part, it's still bigger than 1/4. And that's cutting out pretty clean, I think. Of course, it is turned up all the way. So let's continue with our little arrow project. We had to open all the doors. Smoke detector started going off. This is a process that's probably better done outside, or with good ventilation anyway. Ought to work. Yeah, kind of an ugly arrow, but it's definitely an arrow coming out. There we go, getting the hang of it. Got a little outside the lines. Not bad. Okay, now this will be the tricks, figuring out how to clamp this so I can weld or cut it. Oh yeah. Off to work. All right, well, I don't see how you can be mad at that. They did a pretty dang nice job. And this is the first thing I've ever tried to kind of like, I don't know, wouldn't call it metal sculpture, but metal art anyway, with a plasma cutter. and using a bulldozer cutting edge is the piece. So all of this is called dross, and I found chips off pretty easily with the chipping hammer. So on the back side, it's a lot heavier, and I probably use a grinder on that. So I'm gonna clean this up and we'll end this review out. I started to use the grinder to knock off that dross, and actually I found it actually comes off easier with the hammer. So it's pretty much cleaned up. It's hot still, but hey, I don't think it's bad for a stylized arrow out of a cutting edge. So the floor is covered with these small metal particles, and that's why you want to wear a respirator when you're doing this. You don't want to breathe that stuff. And what I'm going to do is, because it did throw a lot of sparks, a lot of flame, you can see some of the pieces there, I'm going to leave this area alone for at least an hour and come out and check it, make sure nothing's still hot or that nothing's found something that can add a spark to. So there's your safety tip. So that was cutting on 220 volts at 65 amps. And that material is super hard. So I did have to kind of what they would call a severance cut, which is, like I said, cut it kind of in bites instead of a clean cut. But it did a nice job. All right, well, if you liked this video and got anything out of it, we'd appreciate a thumbs up. It absolutely helps the channel. And we invite you to subscribe and see more. Have a great day and be safe. Safety guy.
I got nothing to say.
All right.